All right, we're live. Hello.
Hi.
Uh, welcome to the show. I guess back. This is the second episode. My guest today is my friend and housemate, Hannah Elion. Hi, Hannah.
Hey, Noah.
Hannah is a musician and producer and many other things that we're gonna get into. Um, but yeah, we have limited time because we're gonna go until the camera dies.
I'll
So
speak quickly.
yeah, but we'll just jump right in.
Let's.
Let's go back 10 years. Um, you are uh, a student in college, and
Yeah.
you're studying painting,
Right.
but you have a band,
Yes.
and that band is called Overcoats. But I guess also let's go back before. Did you have bands before then?
I had a band. Yes, I had a band in high school called the Whims.
The
Shout
Whims.
out. Yeah.
Okay.
Whims.
The Whims.
W H I M
WHIMS.
S.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I had a little band that I'm blanking on the name on in college before Overcoats. But both of those were very much like um, just kind of like feeling out writing songs. There was not really much intention to like record those songs for other people's listening.
Did you have more of an aspiration towards painting?
Painting, it's like honestly, arguably one of the only more difficult and not lucrative jobs to do in your lifetime
Sure.
is maybe painting
Sure.
over being a musician.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was necessarily thinking that it was going to be a career.
Yeah, but at some point it won over in terms of like choosing what to study in school.
I never considered studying music.
Okay.
Never. And I don't think my parents would have been down for that
But
either.
they were down for painting,
Well, I doubled in philosophy of religion.
which pays,
Equally a
dividends.
lot. Yeah, exactly. I think yeah, they weren't better with painting, but my mom ended up like really becoming besties with my art teacher,
And your mom
etc.
paints as well.
My mom paints as well.
Because we have a painting of
We have a few of hers.
yeah,
Yeah, in
down
our house.
in our house. And I love that one of her with the pig.
Yeah, it's a great one. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the religion, I think they were more allowing me to study. I mean, the fact is they've always been really supportive,
Sure.
but I think they were like, you're going to college, learn something, study something, and I never considered music.
Okay.
So that was off the table.
So then what changed?
Um, Overcoats, really,
Yeah.
is what happened. We
Did you know, like, when you and JJ first started playing together, was it like, okay, this is like a special thing?
100%.
And you were like, what did that feel like?
It was crazy. Like, it was kind of the first time I ever felt something like what people describe as like destiny. Truly.
Okay.
Like, it actually was that crazy.
Yeah.
Like, when we sang together, it was like nothing else I'd ever experienced before. And when I first met JJ, I was like really like taken by her, and like it really was a crazy feeling. And so we got to know each other through college, and we would sing together, but we didn't really like try writing songs until our senior year. But so senior
Wow, that
year,
late.
basically, yeah, we were, all of our friends were starting to look for jobs and stuff, and we were like, let's try writing our first song. And then from there, it just was like so incredibly obvious that it was like the thing that lit me up more than
Yeah.
anything.
It's funny that, like, you know, musicians often talk about this and like the the practicality of how unstable a career in music is. But then I feel like I also have so many friends, and we have so many friends that have just as much instability doing like regular jobs. And I don't know. I guess it's so deeply ingrained in us because that's what we're told. But I really wonder, like, obviously the pay is bad. Um,
You don't go into it for the pay.
you don't go into it for the pay, but the biggest thing people complain about more than the pay, I think, is the uncertainty.
1,000,000%.
Um, and the deeper I get into our world, and the deeper I watch my friends get into other worlds, the instability is comparable. Like, so for anyone out there who's thinking about not studying music because it's unstable, I don't know. It's just funny that we haven't quite adapted our perception to the times.
Yeah, it's true.
But so you choose the less stable path going forward.
Yeah.
You write that first song. What is that first song?
That first song is a song that I still love called Little Memory.
Okay.
JJ, not as much a fan anymore. Like every band has like one song that they're just like, I cannot with this one anymore.
Yeah.
And our first song is that for her.
Really?
It's not for me. I have a different one.
What's that for you?
I'm trying to remember which one it is. Oh, Nighttime Hunger, which is like one of our most popular ones.
It's usually that, like, in that circumstance where the song that you're not maybe the most stoked about becomes a popular song.
Yeah.
And it I don't think it makes, maybe I'm wrong here. I don't think it makes you like hate the song, but it just makes you think like, I put out all these songs for you, and that's the one that everyone seemed like, why that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't control it.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe what people bristle at, is that it just shows that lack of control. You have no control over what your hit is going to be. You can choose the single.
Yeah.
And that only gets you so far.
I remember on making our first record, we were working with this producer named Atre Nouveau. Do you remember him?
No.
Shout out to him. Love him. Was listening to a lot of him in college randomly. He's an artist project too. But I remember when we made...
Under his name?
Under his name, yeah. When we made our song Leave the Light On on our first album, he was like, you guys are going to hate this one because you're going to have to play it at every show. And we were like, no, we love it. And now we like know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how.
But he wasn't right for that song because you.
No,
you don't.
I don't hate that one.
Yeah,
I don't. But he's right that it's like we can't play. We couldn't play a set without playing that.
Yes. Okay, so then you write the first song. You're still in college, and then there's like this massive jump. It just clicked.
Yeah, SoundCloud.
That's
Still
what
in
it
that
was.
era.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk me through that upswing.
Literally put the first song on SoundCloud. Email from mom and pop.
Really?
Yeah, like ridiculous.
But you didn't sign with mom and pop.
We did not.
Okay.
But like there was immediate label interest, which was just like so weird.
And you're still in college at this point.
Yeah, we also have no idea like what that means.
Yeah.
Because also like a label emails you and you're like, I'm getting signed, and that's actually not at all what is happening.
I remember
they want to monitor you for 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
But so we started getting label interest and managers and people, and we were just like, well, I guess this thing has legs.
Yeah.
And so we just
stability,
right. So then we just put out more songs.
Okay.
We recorded all of them in like the student-run recording studio at our college, which I worked at, and a little bit also at our friend Miles Avery's house, who is still a working producer and now lives in LA.
Cool.
And we got a manager. He ended up being really bad, but he helped us get to South by Southwest, which is where we met our agent, Frank Riley, who's like one of the kings of the booking industry and is still our agent now, even though we're not really touring anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we met Arts and Crafts and got a new manager and got signed. So it really was one of those like...
Is this all within one calendar year?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is all... We don't have an album out. We have 4 songs.
How many songs you have written?
More.
An album's worth?
But we're demoing in GarageBand. Like, it's that level of musicality.
You had worked
right
at the studio in college.
Yeah.
But what would you say your studio experience level was at that point?
At that point, like, I could I was experimenting with production definitely, like on my
Mhm.
laptop, but I didn't know yet that it was production, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like you can't produce if you don't know how to do XYZ and don't have the fancy gear. So I didn't really know what I was doing,
Yeah.
but I was
Which is all
producing,
bullshit, but
which
we
is all
we we
bullshit. We know
do
this now.
yeah, but we do feel that way.
Yeah.
Like you can't.
Literally, I was just working with Henry Hall, who we both know,
Mhm.
and he's demoing in GarageBand. And he's like, let's just redo everything. And I'm like, no,
There's
it
some
sounds
there's
sick.
yeah, there's magic to that sometimes.
Yeah. There's a lot of songs. We have a song, Overcoats has a song where we kept like the GarageBand, like electric guitar in there. Cause sometimes it just has vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I was starting to produce, but I didn't totally know what I was doing, and I wasn't really all that interested in learning yet at
Okay.
that time.
You were more interested in writing.
Yeah,
And
I
how
guess
is
so.
performing at that point?
Hated it.
Okay.
Hated it. Used to get hives every time. Had to
Really?
wear a long sleeve shirt.
Beta blockers?
Didn't know about those yet.
Mm.
I actually only found out about those last year. Incredible stuff. Um,
um
yeah,
Very interesting. Okay. So now
we've never talked about this, which is
we've
so fun.
I know, like I wanted to
Now I want
crack
to interview you.
well, then we're cracking the vault on camera,
We are.
which is fun. Cuz I've saved all my questions that I could
Yeah,
have just
that's
asked you
great.
in the kitchen. um so then Overcoats is on my radar at this point. I feel like I am starting out my music career, and I had some friends that would play as hired guns in your touring band, and
Amazing.
people that I've opened for that opened for you and stuff like that. And like
Yes.
Overcoats is like pretty big.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
Um it's really hard, and I think one of the traps in music, and we talk about this a lot, is like how the goalpost continues to move.
Yes.
Like you never kind of I at least never really let myself feel like it was big
Sure.
because I was like, but what about this thing and what
Yeah.
about this thing? There were definitely moments where it felt really surreal and amazing. Like doing our tiny desk was one of those
Yeah.
moments. And we were so young. That was off our first album.
Yeah.
Um, so moments like that, or like when we first signed to Loma Vista, which had been one of my dream labels at the time. Moments like that where I was like, wow, like this is really cool.
And getting to like share that with one of your best friends
Yeah.
probably enhances it.
Yeah. Although it was isolating as well because like we didn't really have much music community yet at the
Yeah.
time. So like it was kind of just us going through it together.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know other people that were on labels or what that meant. So it was exciting, but it was also kind of like crawling deeper into a cave and just being like, am I going to lose the exit?
Was your perception of the goalpost aligned with JJ's perception, or did you guys?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
that's
definitely.
good then.
Yeah. We were always like really ambitious to a corny amount. And I always really
Say more
loved
about
that
that.
about us. Well, we've talked about a lot like my issue when I was in New York is I felt like there was kind of a culture of like not of it being uncool to try.
Yeah,
Like
it's always uncool to try.
yeah, I mean that is global, baby. But yeah, I think that was so frustrating to me
Yeah,
as a culture, and JJ and I really shared like the we were both revolted by that,
yeah,
and we're just really like we'd go to label meetings and we'd be like, we want to open for Coldplay, like make it happen. Like
yeah.
we were just very like
Which is awesome.
not shying away, which was cool. And even if you don't like fully feel that in your heart, it was cool to like put that forward.
Yeah, and I think like you have obviously you have to try, but in order to also make, I think, really good art, you have to risk embarrassment or being uncool.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that a lot of the things that we take for granted as being cool now weren't cool when they started, and
Totally.
someone had to go out on a limb and like be like, I think this is cool.
Yeah. I think about like Michelle Branch.
Yeah.
Like that was not cool then. It was like what I listened to in my bedroom. I would never say that I liked Michelle Branch, but now Michelle Branch is sick.
Yeah. Well, she was always sick,
She
but I
was
guess
always sick,
she's
but my perception
yeah.
of it as something that I could say then that people would
And
respect.
culturally we've been able to admit that.
Yes.
I think similar with Coldplay.
Yeah.
I think we've come back around on Coldplay. I think for years everyone pretended that they didn't really
Yes.
like.
Although I still think there's an issue where people are kind of into stuff with like a slightly ironic tinge.
Maybe, but early Coldplay songs are kind of undeniable.
We really agree on that.
Okay, so arts and crafts for 2 albums? One. Loma Vista.
Loma Vista.
What was that change like?
Messy, weird,
Okay.
scary. Not really a change that was like spearheaded by us. It was pretty much like our business people doing what they thought would be the best thing for our business.
Say more about that.
Like we didn't really have much intention to switch labels, but
But you had a record that did well on a smaller label.
mm-hmm.
So it kind of the natural progression is then to go to a larger label.
That's what our people thought.
Did you have, was that the end of your deal with arts and crafts, or did
No.
Loma Vista had to buy
They
out
had to buy us out,
Okay.
which was flattering,
Yeah.
but also like
It's always flattering when
scary.
someone is like, we're going to actually put real money towards this art that you've created.
Right.
And you're like, who, me?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're like I might as well take this opportunity, and that is also one of like the big traps that I've experienced.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're getting like 140K to make an album, and you're like, I got 140K to make an album. Let me spend it
Sure.
on the album.
Yeah.
And then you've made an 140K album that you probably could have made for 20K.
Yeah, but you felt obligated to
felt
spend money
obligated to
because
spend
someone
it.
gave you money to do that. And also, like any amount of money, I mean, that's like a colossal sum of money to a musician, and then to a business, like
Yeah.
like a record label that has parent companies that makes, insane amounts of money all over the world.
Totally.
It's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and not just obligated, but you get dollar signs in your eyes as well.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, like I can afford this really expensive mixer. Like I want that then.
And it's all about like how much of a gamble can you take on yourself? What do you appraise yourself at? If someone gives you that money to make a record, you have to be so confident in your skills to
Right.
make it for 20K or something.
Totally.
Because if the album doesn't do well, it's your fault
Yeah,
essentially, which
yeah.
is not true, obviously.
Totally.
But you no longer have that that out of like, well, I did all the things that people wanted me to do to make this record, and
Yeah. Yeah, like if I had the chance to do it over again, I don't think I would make a different decision
yeah,
knowing what I did at the time. It was
Yeah.
kind of the only decision that made sense.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, I've made decisions like that. I get it. I think that kind of pressure is funny because it all feels like a good thing.
Mhm.
But then when you look back, you're like, it was pressure.
Yeah.
And there's like subtle pressure. Like, it would be hard to be on a call with a label and everyone and be like, I'm just going to do this in my room. I
Yeah.
think now it's come more into the conversation. I think especially thanks to people like Billie Eilish and stuff who make like massive records at home. But before then, I think that people would still kind of cock their head sideways at that. And I think to some
Yeah.
extent they still do.
Mhm.
You wouldn't give like hundreds of millions of dollars to someone who's going to make a movie on an iPhone.
Totally. And for better or worse, it changed our sound a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we then were like, okay, let's make like something that could be played in like an arena, because our first album was very bedroom.
Yeah.
And then the second one we went more rock.
And what did that feel like while you were making it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Making
it
big
was so fun.
sounds in a studio
Yeah,
is so
it was
addicting.
great.
Yeah.
Loved it. Yeah, fantastic. Felt like a rock star. We shaved our heads.
Yeah.
It was great.
Um, and I guess now we kind of get into the first album was like lightning in a bottle for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the second album felt amazing while you were making it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Comes out 2 days before the pandemic.
Yes. Um,
Our album release show was the last social thing I went to.
Yeah.
In 2020. Yeah.
And how did you feel that?
That was crazy.
Yeah.
It was really sad. I mean, a lot of people went through so many horrible things in that time period.
So it is also like, I think, one, at that time, we don't know the extent of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a new thing. We think it's only going to be like a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, you've put out this album and it's being completely, obliterated in the news cycle by everything else happening in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is sometimes okay. Like, we don't always have to promote a new record. But then as it lingers on, do you start to feel more of that, like, sadness or frustration, or what does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ended up doing well considering everything.
Yeah.
But I do think that it very drastically changed our trajectory,
Yeah.
which had a lot of reverberations into like where we are now, you know? But
Well, tell me more about those.
The reverberations.
Well, or like the ways that it changed your trajectory, because we're still leading up to the second Loma Vista album.
There is no second Loma Vista album.
Or there's an album after.
The third album was then with a distributor.
Right. Oh, the 30 Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was supposed to be the second Loma Vista album.
It was supposed to be the second Loma Vista album.
So we start with these, I guess, trajectory changes.
Yeah. If the album had done really well,
yeah, then there would have been a second.
We probably would have done a second Loma Vista album.
The album did average, which is hard coming off of a big album.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people overlook. It's like, we're talking about, you get those first emails from a label and like you feel like you've made it, and now like all you have to do is just keep making good records after good records. And even when you make a good record, it's still like things don't go according to plan. You get, shelved by a pandemic or whatever. And business decisions have to get made later, whatever. Fuck those. Forget about those for a second. Like, did you start to feel worried about making the second album for Loma Vista?
Well, I will say what we were writing at the time during the pandemic, it was sad.
Yeah. And there's an album to get to the last album, or the most recent album. There's like
there's an album in between that never came out.
That was shelved.
Yeah.
And that's the sad stuff.
Yeah.
That's the stuff. So there's like a feeling of like, the emotion is sad, a little bit, maybe a feeling of like defeat. And you're able to channel that into art. But then you don't want to make the record, or you don't want to put out that record, rather.
Yeah.
Was that your guys' decision?
Well, we wanted to put it out, but we had a lot of creative differences with Loma Vista.
Okay.
Not between us.
Okay.
And we just weren't on the same page about what we wanted it to sound like.
How would you guys describe your vision, and how would you describe their vision?
We wanted it to be like a bit more lo-fi.
Okay.
And
which I think is
a
natural response after making something.
An arena album.
Yeah.
Totally. And they wanted it to be a little bit more kind of like normal indie rock.
Okay.
Labels. And so we just didn't agree on it, and we didn't really want to budge, and they didn't really want to budge. So we ended up parting ways with them.
You parted ways then.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you still decided not to put out.
Yeah, because then we were like pissed
Yeah.
because
You felt like the whole thing had been kind of tainted by this.
yeah, I mean, I think it was just like we really believed in this music.
Yeah.
They clearly didn't believe in our vision as it was.
Yeah.
So then we were like, okay, let's go and make a revenge pop album so they can see how wrong they really were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So we were like, this stuff, we love these songs, but they're not for right now anymore.
So then.
And we wanted to go independent.
Yes.
So we were like, if we're going to go independent, we need to make something that's going to be like.
Make some noise.
Yeah, it's going to make some noise.
Interesting. So you felt like.
But again, it's one of the traps.
Yes.
You think if it's more poppy, it's going to do better. And in our day and age, there's so many weird musicians that are really popular.
Yeah.
And that's a false.
But
false
I
thing.
get that. It's like, there's a kind of like coolness that you can maintain if you're signed to a big label like Loma, and then you make a record that's really weird. But then there's a fear that if you are independent and you make a record that's weird, then you're just gonna like fall into oblivion.
Yeah.
The camera's not gonna die, but the tape is gonna stop. We'll see how long it keeps going.
Okay.
I might have to pause it and then
Okay.
rewind the tape. But it's until the battery dies, not the tape runs out.
Okay, nice.
I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about if you make a weird album.
Oh, if you make a weird album and you
independently.
slip into like oblivion as an independent artist, that is scary.
Yeah.
So you felt like you needed to kind of like grab people by their collars and
Yeah. Because also at this point, we've spent all the money that we made.
sure. What did it feel like to put out the last album?
It was weird.
I saw you guys on that tour. It was great.
Yeah, I love the music. But it was our first time doing it independently, and that was really different.
Yeah.
And it was, kind of like running a marathon after not training for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not equivalent with those time amounts, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
Like having to like
Go
sort
back
of
on tour.
get back into it. A lot of years had passed. We felt a lot older. We felt a lot like everyone had been through a lot, and so it was hard.
And I guess like now, you did that tour, and then you guys haven't toured since, and you have mostly pivoted your musical energy into like production, writing for other people. And how has that felt?
Yeah, that started actually in the pandemic. Because we couldn't tour.
Yeah.
I was like, let me go work in a studio.
Yeah.
And I worked at this place called Figure 8 in Brooklyn. Loved it. Had an amazing time. I think all of my frustrations with the music industry and the parts about being an artist and having to do social media and like all of that stuff, being in the studio and just being able to be a part of the music creation was feeling really refreshing. Around the same time, some friends of JJ and I's asked us to score one of their films.
Cool.
So that's the first time
that was the first time
that
you've
I
done
ever
You've since done
scored.
that
And now I do it a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of a natural progression from, having more time to be able to put towards those things, while also feeling so fatigued from like the touring and album cycle and everything. And so it kind of just went like that.
What's the thing you miss the most about like focusing your efforts into a band? I've heard a lot just now of all the things that you're glad.
Yeah. God, I mean, there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Probably like the relationship with the fans, honestly.
Cool.
Like when you're doing writing for other people and producing and stuff, you remove that piece from like what you do,
Yeah,
you
because
know?
you are now separated from that
Yeah,
by,
and you're in service of the artist for
yeah,
them to have their relationship with your fans. So you just don't see that
yeah.
anymore. But um having those moments of really getting to see like the impact of it, those were like definitely really important to me.
Are
And
there Overcoats fans that you keep up with in some way that you see like popping up in your life?
there are some.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you like a handful of names that are some of our like biggest supporters. We did a Patreon thing for a while.
Cool. How's that?
Fun. Um,
What would you do on that?
mostly it was during the pandemic, so mostly just like Zoom. But
Fun. Just
also we
hang
would,
out.
yeah, but also we would use it as like a way we would send them new songs, and like
Cool.
they heard the album that's in the
The only
vault.
people that have heard this vaulted album.
Yes.
Wow.
Stuff like that. But yeah, I think the relationship with the fans really special. I think I saw you posted recently like somebody did a tattoo of your lyrics. Like
Mhm.
that's happened a few times and it's insane.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I think that plus maybe if people didn't understand what I was doing with my life then, they really don't now. 'Cause there's kind of like not as
They don't
many.
see as much Hannah like in
Yes.
the things that you're working on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're just like there's not as much to show for it.
Okay.
Like I think my parents have no idea what I do every day.
But you make 10 times the amount of songs that you made.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess you're not sending them like, here's what we made today. Here's my session notes from today. Stuff
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. So it's like you have this band and you kind of start like leaning into this like production writing side while the band is still going. When you're doing that, is there any thought that this could someday overtake the other thing? Or in that time, are you still thinking like once the pandemic's over, like Overcoats ride or die to the end?
Yeah. I think at the time, like, well, it started to shift also. I think
Yeah.
Overcoats was like definitely first priority for a really long time. And even when I moved to LA, which was a really big shift for us as a band because
Yeah.
we had been living in New York together the whole time, even when I moved to LA, I was like, you know, we're going to make this work. And like, I think all the stuff that I'm doing in production and songwriting is going to help inform what we're doing.
Yeah, you're gonna hone your skills.
And I think that has actually come around and become true.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there was a while where it was still
Do you
like,
want another pillow?
oh no, I'm good.
Okay.
I'll lean back. Thank you.
This couch is so far back; it's like kind of hard for interviews sometimes.
Yeah, I think for a really long time it wasn't a fear of mine that it would overtake it. But I think this natural thing started to occur
Yeah.
where
And it's not even like it overtook it by force. It kind of just, it dovetailed with kind of you leaning out of Overcoats a little bit.
yeah, I think if we wanted to still be 100% active and I wanted to do all this stuff, I could do both.
Sure.
I think it naturally sort of happened that like we were after our last album cycle, we were just like tired.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like we were just talking to our managers the other day because we're talking about putting out more music, and
Ooh.
and it just felt so silly because to us it had felt like we were like taking this like hiatus and it was really intense.
Yeah.
And then like now we're like, oh, we want to put something out, and in reality we're like at the amount of years it's been where like it's normal to put out something else.
But usually during that time you're constantly thinking about it, whereas now it's just been like out
and
of
we took a
mind.
break from like posting, like
Yeah.
we've looked like we've gone dark.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because it's like how many bands do that? like so many are like, we're done.
We're
And then
done.
they're like,
Yeah.
never mind.
LCD sound system
Yeah.
forever.
And we just did not think that was going to be us. We
Yeah.
were like, we need to take some time off. Like, we're getting disillusioned. And now that we're like thinking about putting out more, it's just like, haha, like we thought that was so unique of us. But in reality, it's every band.
Talk to me more about the disillusionment.
Yeah.
Because I would say like 5 years ago, when I was like, when I knew of you guys, I hadn't met you or JJ. I only knew like Maddie and people that like played with you. And there's this feeling that like once you get to that level, you're always going to be at that level. But all right, we're back.
Nice.
Had to rewind the tape, but there's still life on the battery. So we're going to go.
Proof of concept.
Proof
we're
of
still in
proof
it.
of concept. We're still in it. Trying to figure out a more comfortable way to sit on this couch. This
I know,
whole
I'm
time
like, you should
we're
make
like,
eye contact.
I know, but then I also am trying to keep an eye on this.
Yeah.
I'm just going full feet up now.
Feet up. Nice.
It's my couch. I can do what I want.
Yes, you can.
So we were in the middle of talking about disillusionment, records 2, 3, time between the records. And I guess something I'm really curious about is your perspective on, like, as we've said a couple times, like, there is this belief that, like, once you've made it to a certain level, like, you're kind of set. You just have to, like, there's a Weezer song that I always think about, Perfect Situation. Like, there's the pitch, slow and straight. All I have to do is swing, and I'm a hero. Like, you kind of, and I wonder if that's what he's singing about in that song. Like, once you're there, you just have to, like, maintain.
Yeah.
But that maintenance is hard.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, because the upswing of Overcoats was so quick, and then, like, the kind of plateau was long by comparison.
And I want to be fair and say that, like, the plateau, a lot of the plateau was more internal, emotional.
Yeah.
On paper, there were a lot of things that were happening and firsts that were coming.
But I think that's exactly the nature of this plateau, and maybe what I'm trying to get at, which is, like, you get that first little bit of success, even if it is a fraction of later success that you get, it feels bigger by comparison.
It's kind of like when you do a drug for the first time.
Yeah.
And
you
it's
can never
so
get as
crazy,
high. Yeah.
you can never get as high.
Exactly. And so this plateau is a little bit of a myth. Like, you are always growing. There's always going to be, every time you put out a new record, there's a saying that, like, you make the new record so that people listen to the old record and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But internally, emotionally, you feel like you hit this plateau. And that can be really hard to grapple with creatively.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's the kind of energy that makes you scrap an album because you feel like you need to, like, put a different foot forward. Because you're applying this pressure and you feel like you're here when actually it's like this. So I guess, like, which felt harder? I think I kind of know what you're gonna say, but I won't. Like, which period felt more difficult?
In terms of Overcoats?
In terms of just, like, your emotional state during all of it.
Well, I mean, I will say in the first album cycle, when we were getting, like, a lot of more explosive success, I was absolutely an anxious wreck.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I was 23. Like, of course I was.
Yeah.
I would be if I was doing anything.
Any piece of, like, middling criticism is like, I have to go lie down for 3 hours.
Yeah. So I think, like, it, you see things with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Certainly. Like, I think during that time period, I was, like, so excited, but I was also, like, not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then second album was, like, so fun, but then a lot of it was, like, we didn't really get to reap what we sowed in a way. And then
making that album was really fun.
Making that album was really fun.
And it sucks because it is, like, you guys made an album that is so live oriented.
Right. Yeah.
And then you never did you ever get to tour it?
We did, but like by the time we did, it just felt so late.
Yeah.
You know, we had already put something new out since that.
Yeah.
I think the period that felt hardest was definitely the most recent album
Okay.
cycle.
Yeah.
Just because it didn't really feel like there was as much of a clear path.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing with this, like, once you get up there, there isn't as much of a clear path
Yeah.
because you have a lot more people telling you what they think you should do
Yeah.
than you ever do before. And to the best of our abilities, we can tune that out, but it seeps in over time.
100%.
And it can be really difficult to ignore it when it's that persistent.
Yeah. I feel like so much of what I do now as like a producer
Uh-huh.
is like just try to help people through that
Yeah.
and be like, I'm not going to tell you what I think you should do.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you make the decision
That's very
that you should
therapist
make.
of you.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Hana
and
is also going to become a therapist.
yes, we hope. We hope. Although my dad always says now, like, well, classic when you think you want to do that is like when other things pop off. It's
Well,
always
yeah.
the case, but yeah, I'm interested.
What
in
a
that
good
very
problem to
much.
have,
It
though.
is a good problem. But yeah, like I think, you know, a lot of the artists I work with now, obviously there's the technical piece of what I'm doing and the musical piece of what I'm doing, but a lot of what I'm doing emotionally, spiritually with them, which undeniably is a part of music making, is trying to help them take that voice out of their heads.
Cool.
Because it's it's a hard thing that people feel.
That's a very cool perspective to take. And it kind of gets to maybe one of like the core questions that I try to ask on here, which is about like artistic endeavor and legacy and like how do you want to spend the finite time that we have like making art and like what is your kind of what excites you about making art right now, and what do you hope people will like remember things that you make by?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I feel like I haven't thought of like what I do now with more of the producing, songwriting stuff as, or even composing as me making art. It's felt a lot more like
Craft.
in service of somebody else's art, and also just something that I've tried to be really pragmatic about in terms of like music is the thing that I know how to do best. Like, what's the most stable way that I can continue to have a career in it as I get older?
Yeah.
Don't want to tour as much, you know, not going to be as young, said that already, etc.
I would call that like the transition of like art to craft.
Yeah, that's nice.
Trade.
Yeah.
Like some kind of
but yeah, I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I feel like it's something that my my beliefs about it have shifted so much already.
Where do you feel like they are now, if you can pinpoint them?
I feel like I'm trying to make stuff that feels specific.
Cool. Specific to the person you're working with?
Yes, as well as like what I'm adding to it, feeling specific.
You want to have a distinctive fingerprint?
I want to have a distinctive fingerprint, but not in the way that like you can tell when like Jack Antonoff is on these 3 songs. I want to help. I want to make artists sound as distinctive as they can.
Cool.
That's what's exciting.
And I think that's maybe ties in with your therapist producer persona of like you help the artist understand who they want to be.
Yeah.
and that's, you know, a big part of being a producer is the
As you know.
yeah, the relationship management and like emotional negotiation
Mm-hmm.
of working with an artist,
Yeah.
because um it is emotionally taxing work,
Yeah.
and you need to help the artist feel comfortable pulling out something deep
Mm-hmm.
from within themselves.
Yeah. But then, like, on the other side, I'm also loving mixing right now
Mhm.
because it's just so, like, a different side of your brain. It's
Yeah.
really technical. It's really type A. I felt like I could, I was never expected to be able to do that. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of things that are exciting about that too. I think just honestly, like the pluralism of it all is what's exciting to me
That's
now.
cool.
Like just really being able to be a producer, like be a mixer, put out another Overcoats album, like
Mhm.
just being able to like let yourself do everything. And I think there's a pressure also when you're an artist to just like narrow and narrow and narrow your
Yes.
niche. And that was also hard for me because I just felt like I'm someone that I like to live in the
You want to be
pluralism of it
you want to be
all.
a polymath.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. So like I think that's what's exciting to me, just like letting myself follow what's exciting.
That's awesome. Do you feel, are there more creative outlets that you want to get into?
Yeah.
Do you miss painting?
I do miss painting, but painting is also like a punch in the gut. For some reason that art form is really mentally challenging for me.
Yeah.
Um but like, you know, I've never really been I've never made music like just for myself
Yeah.
cuz I've always been in a band, so like I'm
Mhm.
trying to write more. Um what else am I trying to do? I want to dance more.
Cool. You did go to a dance aerobics class
I
the
did.
other day?
Yeah. And I just read All Fours, so now I'm like, gotta dance. It's
Yeah.
the truest art.
Nothing is more fleeting than a dance.
Exactly. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, I think my fear now is to be jack of all trades, master of none,
Mm.
because I do want to do everything.
I get that, and it kind of goes against what we're talking about with this idea of like craft,
Yeah.
but um I think it is all in art, and there are certain things that, yeah, you want very well done, but I think that kind of like master of none mentality is a
Yeah,
little
like
bit,
who created that?
it's
Why
a
is that in my head?
it's a trap, because like, how can I
Well, it
explain
comes back to
this?
the garage band thing.
It comes back to the GarageBand thing, but it also comes back to this idea that like an artistic person is going to create powerful works across mediums
Mm-hmm.
because we appreciate their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, Miranda July is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Sculpture, books, films, and it all feels like her.
Yeah.
Dance.
Yeah. And as an artist, your music does not necessarily get better. The more you learn, the more experience you have.
That's the
It's sad.
I mean, that's the paradox, I think, of being a musician, which is like you are first a music fan, and so often the first thing that you love by an artist is the first thing that you heard.
Yeah.
But then as an artist, you're like, oh, but my next shit, that's my best shit.
Yeah. The artist always thinks their most recent thing is the best. But yeah, it goes back to that like, well, jack of all trades, master of none. Like, what even is a master? Like, it's not the same in
I don't
being an
want
artist.
I don't usually want to listen to a master.
Right. Jacob Collier.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jacob Collier. Yeah, I don't.
There's not the same like 10,000 hours thing with being an artist.
No, which is funny because I'm pretty sure that in that book, the Malcolm Gladwell book, he talks about the Beatles, and he
Mm.
talks about like how I'm gonna reveal that I have not read this book, but
I'm constantly making big points about books I've never read.
um, I'll check this later. I'm not gonna check it later. um, he talks about how the Beatles had that club gig in Hamburg and they had to play all the time. They did like 7 shows a week or something,
Mhm.
and that made them good. And
Mhm.
sure, that did make them good. But I think what also made them good was like their relationships with each other and
Yeah.
their perspective. And I think all the time about how John went to art school
Mhm.
and like wasn't a musician, but had a perspective about like aesthetic creation
Right.
that translated into music
Mhm.
and maybe translated most effectively into music.
Yeah.
Um, but he's not a master of the guitar. He
Right.
he's not a master of anything. But he's
Noah Weinman on John Lennon, not a master of anything.
that's the headline. Um, but why do we why do we care about mastery for certain
Yeah.
things?
It's a really great question. I
I
don't know why I care.
I mean, I don't know. I watched Jiro Dreams of Sushi on the
Mhm.
plane,
I love that movie.
and he's a master,
Yeah,
but at what cost?
totally.
Like, there's some profound sadness there.
100%. And yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. Like, obviously, chefs, they have to be trained to a certain level.
Yes.
Um, we think of mixing, for example, as something that's really technical. And on some level, it is. But on some level, it's also just about taste,
I think
you know?
I think it's so much more about taste than people realize. Like when I first started making music, I would get people to mix it who I know had gone to like music school or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just be like, "This sounds bad."
Yeah.
My first record with my first band shelved forever. Um,
Put
and
it
no
out.
offense, no offense to the person who was mixing it. Like he was doing what he thought sounded good, and I
Yeah.
just didn't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And mixing, like cooking, is not exact. Like people are
Yeah.
just gonna have different tastes,
Yeah.
and it's cool that like the variety is what gives you energy right now,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that the variety actually makes all of the individual things better.
Mm.
Like if you can make music of all genres in all the different positions, you'll get to something fundamental about music that you would not otherwise see by focusing in on being one of those.
Yeah.
Like,
That's interesting.
do you think you can articulate the biggest lesson in music you've learned as a producer that you maybe wouldn't have realized as an artist?
Yeah. Um. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's similar to what we're saying now. Like, I think as an artist, you are you cannot see yourself,
Yes.
and you shouldn't, because it's
Mm.
going to take
Hot
away
take.
from you doing what's you.
Okay.
Because you're gonna second guess. You're gonna think about how other people are perceiving it.
And that leads to you pigeonholing yourself.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. So I think as an artist, you cannot see yourself, and you shouldn't. As a producer, your job is to see.
See the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See the artist, see music, just be more like big picture about things. And I think mentally that's a nice trajectory for our brains as well. And so I think the biggest lesson has been also just kind of like helping me figure out how to live in a happier way, of not being so insular on something and just kind of like remembering to zoom out. Um, I don't know if you meant life lesson or like in
No, I
my
mean
work,
I
but
mean both.
yeah,
But the
so I think that's
zooming
been a
out,
big
which
one.
is both a life lesson and a work lesson. But that's interesting too, because now that you've gained this perspective on like, oh, I see this artist in this way. I
Mm-hmm.
hesitate to say like for what they are, because we can't really know what that
Sure.
absoluteness. But and then you're like, but I cannot see myself in that way.
Yeah.
But you must inherently develop this vocabulary, and then what? You push it out? or you like internalize it and then push it out.
You mean when going back to writing or
And
like
like
doing
now that
artistry?
and like if you're gonna self-produce,
Mm-hmm.
how do you
It's really meta.
yeah, I mean, how do you look at yourself as your own producer? How do you look at yourself as your own artist, as your own producer?
Mm-hmm. It's really meta. I basically don't think anyone should do that.
But you kind of have to do it, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
kinda. Yeah. I mean, I think if I'm like writing, it's like yeah, when I have my producer hat on, I'm like rational. And then if I want to write, I have to push all of that out and just be
Mm.
like a little emotional baby.
What's rational about being a producer?
Um well, I guess not all producers are that way. This is
No, I
just how
mean,
I see it, but
I would describe myself as a rational producer too, because like someone can have ideas and then you have to be the one who's like, okay, what is that? How do I actually make that sound? How do I put that into the track?
right.
XYZ. That's where the rationality comes in. And
Mhm.
that's how sometimes you can like cut yourself off at the knees as an artist
Mhm.
if you are too practical.
Yeah.
The artist should like dream of whatever they want,
Mhm.
and then the producer has to be the one to be like, all right, this is what it looks like in reality.
Yeah.
But if you're in both seats, what you're saying, I guess, is that you need to sit in one seat only at a time.
Yeah, I have to be like multiple
You have
personality.
to
Like
you
I'm
have to
here and then I put on a hat and I'm over here.
you have to write the whole song, be the artist, and then like bring it into yourself as a producer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to really like get rid of my ego.
Hmm. What does your ego tell you?
Mostly it talks shit
Okay. About.
myself.
Yeah, but like
Like this is bad.
I guess I'm wondering. I'm not asking. I'm not asking this in a good way, but like, does it push you in one direction over another?
I
Does the
think
artist self and the do the artist self and the ego self pull you in different directions?
well, I think what I'm saying is the artist self and the ego self are the same.
Okay.
Um or like the ego self is like the little devil on my shoulder when I'm trying to be an artist.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to be a producer, I don't deal with the ego thing as much, even though there are definitely producers that do. But yeah, I guess it's like like is this cool enough? Is this the right? But now sometimes that ego person sometimes actually does come up when I'm producing like something that I'm making. Like now I'm like example the song I just showed you. Like is this the right
Which
sonic
all
palette?
I can say is that it's maybe a song for you,
Yeah, maybe so.
and you showed it to me in the kitchen like a
Yes.
couple hours ago.
Yes. Like is this the right sonic palette? Oh, should I like put more like
And that's got to be a hard step to take, 'cause like, you know, you've been making music for so long, but if you are going to put out music as you, what's that first step like? How do you come out of the gate?
Don't know.
And that's where the ego is probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your tricks to ignore it?
Um I think when I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
like full commitment to the story. Like I really try not to edit myself when I write. I edit after.
Okay.
I think that's an important piece of it. I just don't feel like I can be creative and be judging it at the same time when it's for me
Yeah.
for some reason, because it's like
Well,
I
I
have a
think
blind spot.
I mean I think that's fundamental to making art of any kind. You can't edit while you write.
Right. But as a producer, it's kind of the job.
Yes. Which is why so many people hire outside producers,
Yeah.
outside editors.
Yeah.
But there's also a kind of joy in self-producing.
Yeah. People would always ask with overcoats once I was getting more into it, like, why don't you produce overcoats? And I'm like, that's like shitting where you eat. I can't
It would
try
also
to do
it would
both.
also be really complicated with if you were to produce, because you and JJ would
Yeah,
be,
JJ would also have to produce,
yeah,
and
and then you'd just be stacking on top of each other.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's very
But
true.
you've been collaborating on new stuff,
Yeah.
potential new stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been trying to do so much. All of the songwriting production I've done lately, I'm working with so many talented people,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always just been like, my goal is to be producing and songwriting for other people. So that's what I'm going to spend my time on. But at some point, I was like, oh my God, I have all these incredible musicians around me. Like, let me try writing something again, just because I haven't exercised that muscle in so long. And it could even make me a better whatever,
The
you
song that
know,
you showed me this morning um, is your first song in how long that
that
you've
I've
written
written.
for yourself?
Um,
There was one you showed me, I think, 2 years ago, but I'm
yeah.
wondering if there's any in
Yeah,
between.
there's like, if when I'm writing for myself now, it's like I do a verse and chorus, and then I'm like, okay, I feel better. It's kind of like self therapy.
Okay, so it's
So
kind of
I don't go through.
it's a cathartic release more than an intentional
Yes, I don't
creation.
go through the process of being like, now how do I record this?
Yes.
It's more just like,
When does the practical brain
get it out on guitar,
Yeah.
go do something else. But trying to produce it now, it's like, oh, let me try to like use this. Yeah, just like use this other side of my brain, use this skill. Yeah, it's really hard to be self-aware when you're making something.
How does it feel to get back into it though?
Um, it feels nice. It feels nice. It feels weird.
Yeah.
I don't really know what I sound like without JJ. I'm learning that. Um, so it's just kind of like a nice exercise in like understanding myself and how far I've come. And if I never put any of it out, that's a-okay.
Mhm.
It's just like it's nice to be able to like find joy in that again, because I think I like blocked myself off from experiencing that joy when I decided to be more professionally focused on other people.
Yeah. Do you think you can articulate the sonic differences that you're noticing so far?
Um
Of Hana music versus Overcoats music?
I don't know, because a lot of the Overcoats songs, like some of them we would write together like in one sitting, and a lot of them it would be more like one of us would bring something. So it's definitely not clear cut.
Mhm.
Um I'm definitely experimenting with production on it
Mhm.
more. Um
I've noticed that the harmonic palette
is different.
is different.
Jazzier.
Maybe jazzier's a way to describe it. I think you know, you came from a folk background. You play
Mhm.
banjo.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really prevalent in Overcoat songs.
Yeah, these definitely don't have that.
Um
Or do they?
I mean, there's an element, it's in your voice, but I would say that like with Overcoats, when you're writing for two voices, you kind of leave things more harmonically simple so that there is
Right.
like clear path to layer in two
Yeah,
voices.
that's very true.
And like the thing that you played me today is very single voice,
Yeah.
very
Trying to find a harmony to that would be such a headache.
exactly, but you're only writing for one voice this time.
Right.
So it's kind of opening you up in these other ways, which I don't know if that's like an intentional thing on your part. Like, I
Mhm.
guess that's why I was asking is like, are you exploring new harmonic territory, or is that just what is naturally happening because you're only thinking about a monophonic
Mhm.
melody line?
Yeah. I think ultimately what I'm learning about my process from this conversation
Mm-hmm.
is that when I'm trying to get back into writing again, I am not thinking. When
That's
I'm producing, I'm thinking.
yeah.
It's a lot of thinking and it's feeling. But when I'm writing, I haven't figured out yet, maybe I will, how to think and feel at the same time.
let's dive in a little bit more on your creative practice then within that realm. Like, do you keep a journal?
No,
Have you ever?
I have.
Um, are you the kind of person that writes down ideas as they come,
Yeah.
or okay, what does that look like?
Um, it might be like a phrase
Mm-hmm.
or like
Like a phone note
yeah,
that
or
you
like
just
a little voice memo melody. I have a lot of beats that start that way, honestly. Like I'll get an idea for a beat and I'll
you
just be like
beatbox it.
boom ba boom boom ba boom 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 ba boom ba boom,
Do you
and
have
then I'll
any of
go,
those?
yeah.
Can I hear one?
My phone's not, it's over there. Do you want me to find one?
It'll take too much time. I
It
think
will.
the battery's about to die.
Yeah.
Um, we'll have it as an addendum.
Yeah.
Uh, that's so funny. But 'cause I imagine like some of your writing is just happening in the cracks of your many other projects that you're doing.
Yeah.
So, do you find that like, with the exception of making the song you did yesterday, like, are you just writing kind of here and there, bits and pieces
Yeah.
until you kind of So you're not
I'm
like
writing all the time and I don't know what it's going to be used for.
yeah,
You know
because
what
it
I
might
mean?
not even be for you.
It might be for an artist I'm working with, it might be for pitch.
That's got to be very liberating to have that many outlets. Because you could, in the past, I imagine, write something and be like, "That's pretty good, but I don't think that's overcoats."
Yes,
And then
that happened a
it's
lot.
exactly, which kind of gets back to this like jack of all trades, master of none thing. Like, it's still the same core process. You are
Mhm.
still maybe, all the shit we're talking about mastery. Like, you're still maybe gaining mastery over this thing. It's
Yeah.
just the thing is bigger than we had realized before.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say that the Beatles were the masters of being the Beatles. They were
Mhm.
just great musicians.
Yeah.
How soon after you make something do you feel like you know where it belongs?
I often have to take time away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similarly, like what I was saying about Michelle Branch,
Mm-hmm.
I have songs like that too. And
Yeah.
Overcoats had songs like that like when we wrote them, we were like, no. And then 2 years later, it's like, actually, this is cool. I feel like
Okay.
that's like part of it. Like sometimes you need distance to be able to, again, get that perspective from something.
What's the oldest thing that you have kicking around in your like still maybes pile?
Literally one of the first songs I ever wrote, I think I was 16,
Okay.
is still a song that I would love to put out at
And
someday.
you have you ever tried to record it?
We've never tried to record it. I wrote it when I was 16, but
Okay.
I've showed it to JJ and she likes it, and we've played it together before. Like I've taught her a harmony, but it never fit into an Overcoats album because I wrote it when I was 16. And then I haven't tried to record it, but like I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about it?
Do I love?
Yeah. What's
it's
it called?
It's really simple. Will you let me back into your heart?
Cute.
Yeah. It's really
What
simple.
inspired it?
I don't know.
There's something
I clearly hadn't experienced much heartbreak yet by 16.
but that's what makes it so much rawer when you have.
Yeah.
Wow, 16. And I think like it's so funny because you write something at 16 and you're like, this can't be that good. I was 16. But here you are,
Yeah.
years later, having written many songs as a professional adult
100%.
and considering the value of the song that you wrote when you were 16.
Yeah. It's so crazy to listen to it too.
If
Because
you
you're
told
like,
me that when I was 16, I would not believe you. I'd just be like, you're just saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's crazy. And you listen back to, like, I'm sure you have old stuff as well. You listen back to it and you're like, what was I thinking when I wrote this?
Yeah.
Like, how did I make this? Like, what interesting choices
I know.
made.
And like such free choices that I would never make now.
Totally.
And I mourn that loss
100%.
constantly.
Yeah.
How do we get back? I mean, I was talking about this when I had Kev on this show too. Like, how do we tap back into that like amateurish creation?
Mm-hmm.
Because we spend so much time approaching mastery and developing all these skills when really we just need enough skill to refine what was awesome when we didn't know it.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What's the vibe? What do you do in this song as a 16-year-old that you're like, wow? Like, why does it stick around?
um it's just so simple. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that simple is like harder
Yes.
than
It's
complicated.
it is maybe it's not harder.
It's harder to do well.
I wonder if it's just scarier
Yeah.
because it just takes more confidence.
Right. That what you've done is enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could say the same for painting. Like you know,
Totally.
certain very minimal gestural
Yeah,
paintings.
like this.
Well, these are my
But like if
fake sound
this
paneling.
could be like in a museum
Sure.
and you'd be like, I can make that.
Yeah, 3 blue squares. But it takes confidence. It takes
Yeah.
confidence to put that up and say that's enough.
Yeah.
And it's simple. What?
Mhm.
2 chords and a chorus that you repeat a bunch of times?
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. I'll play it for you.
Do you have other simple songs that you admire for their simplicity?
Yeah, totally.
What are some of those?
Songs in the Vault. Uh
Either that you've written or that are just like, wow, that's such a simple, pure thing. I wish.
I have another one that I wrote when I was like 20 or something called I Just Need a Little Something to Happen. Love that one.
You've got a soft spot for like the
Long titles.
Yeah, I mean, so do I. But yours are like complete sentences, not in like the Panic at the Disco way. Just
yeah, I write sins, not tragedies.
Yeah.
What else?
I think simplicity is so hard to get.
And I think also it's like when I think about my favorite bands, then like when I was first listening to music, first attempting to write music, it was a lot of really simple stuff or things that I admired for being simple.
Simple is more vulnerable also because if you fail at simplicity, whatever. You don't get to like back it up with like, oh, you didn't get it. Like, oh, this song is really complicated because you think the key center's here and then the key center actually moves to here. And if you don't like the song, then it's like you're just not a sophisticated enough listener. But if you're like, this is my song, it's 1 chord and I complain about my life over 1 chord.
I think corny is what I find to be the scariest critique of my music.
Say more about that.
I just think corny feels like the worst possible thing something could be.
Has anybody ever called something you made corny?
No.
Okay. Where do you think that comes from?
That's a really good question.
I wonder, you know, it's a
What do you think is the worst thing somebody could call your music?
Boring.
Boring. Yeah, see, I'm not worried about being boring at all. I'm like, if it's boring, great. I like boring music.
I like some boring music too.
But yeah, where has someone called it boring?
I think some people have called it boring.
Okay.
I've made some stuff in the past that's, well, thank you. I've made some stuff in the past that's a little bit monodynamic and harmonically simple, and I like it, and like I hear complexity in it.
Yeah.
That, you know, probably some people don't hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to embrace simplicity more. I'm trying to embrace like wrongness more.
Mm-hmm.
I want to like stop doing things to a click and quantizing them and tuning stuff.
Yeah.
But that is
so
also
refreshing when it's not like that.
But that's also really scary to let yourself have.
Yeah.
Because like, what if someone is like, this is bad. You did a bad job with it.
Yeah. Why is that so scary?
I don't know. Like,
I think actually I know why it's so scary. And this is another thing that I think is one of the hardest parts about being an artist is that critiques are taken to heart. They're about you. They're not about your product or the job you did that day. Like things are taken very personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so scary because it's not like the thing you made is bad. It's you're bad.
I think it's also like trauma from school. Like having something that is out of time, out of tune, whatever, is like stuff that like music teachers and other teachers, based on the like whatever the criteria is, like would like ding you for,
Mm.
and then you'd be like, "Oh, I'm
Did you
dumb."
did you study music?
No,
No. What'd
but
you study again?
poli sci
Yeah.
and creative writing. But
Okay.
yeah,
Creative writing.
some of it applies. And I remember like writing stories that I thought I liked that got bad grades,
Mhm.
and then stories that I was like, I'm just gonna do what the teacher says, and I think this is a bad story, but then I get a good grade, and I'm like, this is frustrating.
Yeah.
And it is hard to put that out when I'm making music. Also, um, I don't know if you experience something like that.
Um what when somebody likes it but you don't love it?
No, that like you're approaching what you create with a rubric
Yeah.
that is maybe not of your own creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like the first thing I think you have to throw away when you're really trying to
Totally.
make something. But it's hard to throw away.
Yeah. Totally.
And corny is on your rubric.
Corny. Yeah.
What else would be on your rubric?
Like as a do not do this.
Or just like, corny, whatever the opposite of corny is. Unique, amazing, original.
Earnest.
Is earnest the opposite of corny?
I don't know. No. Kind of.
Yeah. Sometimes, well, we've hit a point in music now where like earnestness, being emotional, is kind of it's commodified at a certain point. So
Yeah.
we've hit this now new phase of that where like it can feel forced, and then that feels corny.
Yep.
Um, and that's really dangerous
Totally.
because I think like it used to be that like things that were corny were like sappy and like grandiose.
Right.
And now we've got people who like kind of hollowly mime the really personal, emotional songwriting that a lot of songwriters do really well today.
Mhm.
But then if you do that with a kind of emptiness, that feels really corny.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, then it's not earnest. So earnestness could be the opposite there.
Yeah.
What's the best compliment someone could give your music?
Specific.